It is the Tuesday after Memorial Day, just like you said, Jessica, but it is the first day of June. It's the first day of the last month of the second quarter. And I get to talk to you today. And I just had a campfire. So like if there was ever a day charged with perfect energy, this is the day. So you could not have picked a better day to be on the show.
That's great.
Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to introduce you real quick, and then I want to ask you how your weekend was. Since it was a long weekend, I'm curious if you took a long weekend or if you worked. But folks, welcome Jessica. She's a member of our Profit Concierge group. I've met her through this process. She's been to a campfire, and I just couldn't get enough of chatting with her. So we had to have a snack and learn because we're completely aligned because we talk about money, both of us. We talk about money and the fact that it's not a bad thing. And the long and short of it is Jessica helps women stop living paycheck to paycheck. So once and for all, she helps her clients get their mindset straight around money, because you've got to have both the money and the mindset to make any real or lasting changes. And I so completely agree with that. I find that in my finance work with people that there's so much about the mindset that we need to get. I'm going to put up Jess's Facebook group here towards the end because I'm in it, and I hope all of you join it because the conversation there is really cool and it's real. Like this isn't an expert coming, this is an expert coming at you, but it's not an expert coming at you with any sort of arrogance about it. It's a genuine conversation that just makes the aha lights go off over and over again. So Jessica, welcome. How was your weekend?
Thank you so much for having me here. It was great. It was very people-y is what I like to call it. When there's lots of people, it was very people-y. And cool. As an introvert, I'm very tired now today.
This is the last thing you wanted on your Tuesday schedule.
No, I won't say that because I really do enjoy talking with you. And it's been funny because it's sometimes hard for me to get into networking groups and get into places to meet new people because it just like there's that extra hump that I feel like I have to get over to do that. But your group and your campfires and all that are just, I have so much fun every time. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is perfect. Perfect.
So do I love them. So that makes me really happy that they're an easy and helpful place to be. That's awesome. So it was people-y for us too. So last night we went out to dinner to a restaurant, no masks, fully vaccinated. And I sat there, like I took a selfie with Deb. We sat there and I went, this is the strangest, most surreal thing. And yet it's the most ordinary thing. Like we took a selfie. I was like, I will never, there are some things I just don't think I'll ever take for granted again.
Correct. Yep. Same. I had a family I haven't seen in a very long time on Saturday. One of my relatives is moving across the country. So we kind of had to get together and it's cousins I haven't seen in years. It was great. It was almost a shock to the system just because I don't
hug them.
Yeah. Everybody was together. Everybody was having a great time. You know, we had the neighbors all together on whatever day that was, Sunday. Yesterday, we had another big party to go to. It was nice to see lots of groups of people enjoying themselves again.
I love it. And that's exactly how I felt. It's just weird how much lighter I feel. And like, just to get in the car and get out of it with, in some cases, not having to have my mask on and feeling, I don't know. Anyway, it's just a really cool sort of, I feel like I'm coming out of a shell almost.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
so I just got off a campfire and we were talking and one of the people said that one of their biggest, actually two of the people said this out of five of us, that the biggest issue in their business is the money. And so I asked them, knowing that we were coming on to chat, I said, is it that you don't feel like you have the skill set to make the right money, like, or the thing that'll get the money and know how to spend? Like, is it skillsy stuff or is it mindset stuff? And both of them said it's mindset stuff. So here's my question for you. How did you get into this whole thing? And what is the one single thing around money mindset that if we tackle it has the biggest impact? I think that's kind of my big question.
Gotcha. So first question, how did I get involved? I have no finance background. whatsoever. So I just have always been good with, I'm a nerd. I just have always been good with numbers. I was a mathlete. I loved calculus. That was just how I was. So they were easy for me to see because it's like a puzzle for me. So numbers themselves are easy. So the budgeting and the spreadsheets and all that, that's just fun for me because I'm a big nerd. And my whole life, I've been a penny pinching kind of nerd.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that was a good thing because that sounds like the responsible way to be. I was the saver. Turns out I'm actually more of a hoarder when it comes to that. But I was just very good with it all. I just knew what to do for whatever reason. The money part wasn't hard once I had it and could organize it. Okay. The making it was the harder part for me, but that's a whole other topic. The thing is, I learned the mindset was important because back in 2017, my family and I, we paid off all our debt. We got all of the household debt taken care of and gone. But I didn't feel any better. I still felt like we were living paycheck to paycheck. I still was scared to death of running out of money. Like there was still something going on, even though we met this huge goal that we were doing and we'd worked.
Let me pause on that for a minute and dive in. So the actual moment that you realized, wow, that's it. So now the debt's gone. Everything we make, we know we make enough. Clearly that you could spend everything, just what you need and you'd still have some left over. In that moment, there was nothing, or there was a feeling and then it just kind of went away. Like, explain that to me, because what an amazing time.
And I think I built up so much and we were working so hard to get to that point that once we reached it, I think like there wasn't a big party and the angels weren't singing at me, like nothing happened. It was just another day. Exactly. And it was just another day. And I remember sitting there thinking like, okay, but now what? And now because I had paid it all off, there was a fear involved. Oh my gosh, we can't ever get back to that now. So it almost made it worse. Like it's a weird way to look at it, but paying off the debt, while it was a good thing, also kind of, I started sabotaging myself in that same breath, just because, okay, we can never go back again. And that kind of kept us in a not great place for a while, and it wasn't healthy for me. So I started learning more. I've been raised with personal development stuff my whole life. We listened to like Zig Ziglar tapes when I was a kid. But it was always, I was the eye roller of the family because I was the analytical, logical. So I would sit with my arms crossed and be like, yeah, whatever. Yes. Mm-hmm. So once I finally started learning it myself and seeing it differently, like I had to get it from here to like sink down to here to really feel things. That's when things started to changing in my own life. So that's when I realized the money isn't enough. You need that mindset piece to really start making the connections to make the changes that you can actually feel and see going forward.
Got it. So you kind of recognized I should be feeling something here. It should be better. I should be seeing this as the fruits of my labor, but I'm really not. Instead, I've created my next labor.
Yes, very much so.
You said, I'm not going to just let that happen. I'm going to explore it.
It took a little bit of time for me to realize that that's what I needed to do. Actually, that was when I started getting into financial coaching and learning how to be a financial coach. Okay. I was learning all the bits and pieces for the money side more so I could teach that. And my business when I first started was very debt focused and very helping families get out of debt, helping people, again, with the numbers. Yeah. But as I was going through the coaching processes myself and hiring my own coaches and getting into my own programs to learn and improve myself, that's when the light bulbs started clicking like, wait a minute, the money isn't the biggest part necessarily for the people that I'm talking to.
Got it. And so often it'll keep them from even getting to that first goal.
Correct.
Some people get to the first goal and never appreciate it. And because I'm remembering, certainly I've had this cycle in my life. Like when I started out working as a kid, well, I never put money in a 401k because I just needed all the cash. At the ripe old age of 18, I needed the cash.
We all do.
And living from 18 to 30 by my definition, right? So like one of the things I tell my daughter, I mean, I don't have any regrets in life at all. But if there was one thing I would change, it would be that I would have started putting 10% of my income in a 401k every single paycheck.
Yep.
If that was too much, I'd have put it somewhere else. I mean, we were taught about charitable contributions, so we had that down. But I wasn't, and I was taught. It was almost like a rebellion
Yes.
Like, so my dad, when he was a kid, TMI, I don't know why I'm telling this story,
All
but when
good.
he was a kid, it was during the Depression, and his parents had to send him, and I think his brother too, to live with cousins in Maine because they couldn't afford to feed them during the Depression.
Mhm.
And that sat with him so much that he truly never borrowed money for anything our entire lives. I think he got a mortgage on a house once, but it was like a house they bought for $6,000 in 1950, and they may have gotten $1,000 loan on it.
Mhm.
So that was just embedded in me. Don't borrow, don't borrow, don't borrow. So
Mhm.
I think I rebelled. And so I spent and built up credit card debt. And then I'd get it paid off, and I'd be like, yeah, I got it paid off. And then 2 months later, I'd be back
Right
in
back in.
debt. So I had that. I can look back now and see that cycle.
Mhm.
But I remember a real feeling of like, okay, this time it's going to be different. And it never, until I grew up, it never was. And
Right.
I think it must have been rebellion mindset on my part, I guess.
Yeah, and that happens to a lot of people. That's just the standard of that's just the way it is. And I'm going to do better, but then they fall off the wagon. Going to do better, fall off the wagon until there's something. Like for me, I can't tell you what it was, but something happened. I think it was in 2015 because we had been working on paying off our debt for 8 years by that point, and we weren't making any headway with it. And so I wish I could remember what it was, but I remember having a distinct time where I was like, that's it, we're done. And 18 months later, everything was paid off. So there's always something, whether you realize it could just be an energetic shift. Like there is something that happens that gets people to get over that hump of being comfortable and okay with where they are, even if it's not great, to know I'm sick and tired of this. It's time to change. And that's what's kind of needs to happen in order to make the changes that'll really stick.
Yeah. And I think one of the messages here, we're talking about mindset, but one of the messages I want to have for everybody in this group, because we have people at every level of economic everything in this group is really cool. And I've always said that there's no shameful money story, because if you talk to a room of 20 people have what they think is the most embarrassing money story, myself included. We all have. So let's just, there is no shame. But I know there's a lot, I think there's a lot of hope to be had in somebody looking at what you do and saying, oh, there's a way I can get out of this. So do you have a process or a method that you teach people in their personal and business side, or their personal side? Like, how does what you do work?
So what I do first is I always work with their personal side first, assuming most of the clients I work with are female. I have worked with some couples, and they tend to be the ones that pay the bills. Like they might not make all the money in the house, but they're the ones that are in charge of the money in the house. And I work with them first to get their household in order, because a lot of them don't realize if they have a business on the side, if they have, a small business, even just a part-time job, many times they got that because the house, they couldn't figure out the house. Not the house, but like the household bills.
Yep.
So they're thinking that by adding more money, that's going to solve the problem because it was too hard to fix it. So they're just like sticking Band-Aids on everything.
Got it.
But until they realize that, until the household money gets figured out and taken care of, you're just going to keep repeating the same patterns. You won't see the increase in income in your business. You will have a hard time managing your business funds. You won't set up a budget. And you'll the same problems you have at home, whether you're a spender or an extreme saver, it's going to repeat itself in the business. So I always work with the household stuff first, and then we can work on the business side. Again, I'm not a financial guru like you are in terms of knowing the business finances, but I can.
If you can get stuff sorted out, you certainly are. So, like, I think the important thing to get across is there is a very learnable set of tools you can give people to get them from A to B. And I think the word budget, people often think of that as constraining, as it's a trigger word. It's got all these negative connotations. And talk to me about that, because how do you work with people who say to you, hey, I don't want to do a budget, or I can't do a budget?
That's all of them.
Like, how do you help them understand that it's not a
life sentence.
It's not a life sentence. It's not a noose. It's more it's like a path. It's just a path.
It is. So one of the first things I teach, there's a couple different little things I teach. But the main thing with my main 8-week program is a budget system. I call it a future-based budget system. And it's a system that I've learned and tweaked over the years that I've taken from lots of other people who knew what they were doing, and I kind of just made it my own. And it doesn't feel like a budget. It's I do it differently. We don't budget by month. We don't budget by like the things that stress them out. I try and get them to, okay, what do you value? What do you want more of in your life? And we build the budget around that. Now, in the beginning, if they're a little bit upside down, if they're struggling to get things paid on time, yeah, we got to take care of that stuff first, obviously, and kind of clean up a little bit. Yeah. But once we can get them to stop feeling like they're paycheck to paycheck, which usually only takes 4 to 6 pay periods, then we can start, okay, where do you want the money to go? Do you want to pay off debt? Do you want to do a vacation? Do you want to do both? Like, we kind of can then work with them. There's one of the biggest things that drives me crazy is people like, there's a right way and a wrong way to do money. There's not. Everybody's personality is different. Everybody's circumstances are different. You can't cookie cutter it and make it work for everybody and make it work well. So, yeah.
I think the big message there, and I hope people, whether you're watching this live or on replay, I hope you're picking this up. There is a path to this success if you're struggling at all with overwhelming debt, inability to pay the bills, even actually making it but going paycheck to paycheck. There's a path out of this that is not as painful as you're probably imagining it. And I love the fact that you call it future-based. And the other thing I love is I think of money as energy or exchange of value. Like, so the fact that you just said it's different for everybody is so true, because, we were talking, and this is just a mild example of it, but I was talking to my wife last night when we went out to dinner live in person in public. And we drove past a gas station. Well, prices are up right now for gas a lot. I haven't had to fill my tank for forever because I haven't gone anywhere. So I went and filled it up, and it was $40 to fill up my little Subaru. So I'm like, wow, that was $40. And she says, well, gas is really expensive at this gas station, Pam. You know that, don't you? You should drive, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, because that's time out of my way. And this extra little 3-cent premium here, that's worth more to me than the 3-cent premium on the gas. So anyway, everybody's got a different level of exchange. So
yeah, and everybody thinks about their time and their money differently. And I used to be an avid couponer and always buy stuff on sale, but you get to a point, no, that's just what I want, and it's okay for me to have it. Like, you just have to sometimes, and the money will be, same thing with energy with the money. The money will be there when I need it. It's always there when I need it. That's a whole other side of what I do.
Really good for the most part. I mean, there are really bad situations, and I don't make it, but for the most part, we'll always get exactly what we need to stay right where we are.
Yep.
And that's always been weird to me. It's like, I want to take this one step beyond, and I'm like, oh my God, the sky is falling. I'm never going to make it. This thing has happened. I can't afford it. And just enough money shows up. It's right where we are. Yep. I'm like, what the hell is that?
There's a couple of different ways you can look at it. That's almost like that's the frequency you're tuned in at. Like when people do that, same with debt. They'll pay off all their debt, but then they'll get right back into the same amount of debt. They'll have their savings a certain level. Something will wipe it out. Yep. And it goes right back up again. And it's just, that's what you're tuned into. If you're into energy and frequency and all that kind of stuff, that's just your levels, like your baseline, and you're topping it off. So the goal then is to turn up that frequency, get used to having the extra money if you can hold on to it, which is a whole other, people don't realize that holding the money, just because you get it doesn't mean you have to spend it, not in a hoarding way, but being used to having the money can help you raise that frequency a little bit to be used to having some more money. So there's different steps and processes you can take to kind of get used to a new minimum or a new baseline for yourself and kind of gradually work your way up, which is something I would have never thought in a million years. But looking at my bank accounts now versus where they were, 3 years ago, there's a decent difference.
You've moved your tolerance level.
Correct. Yeah. And now, if it gets below a certain amount, it's freak out time for me before I can reel myself back in. Yeah. But everybody has different levels. Some people, if their balance is at 0 or a little bit above, that's great. Some other people, if their balance isn't at least $5,000, that's why paycheck to paycheck isn't necessarily a literal thing. Yeah. It's very much a mindset, like
personal thing.
Correct.
It's a very personal thing. And you could have $5,000 in the bank.
Yep.
And still feel broke. Desperate as somebody who has zero in the bank because your zero is 5,000.
Yeah. And that person with zero could feel great about life and living in a totally abundant kind of mindset. And the person with the 5,000 could think the world is ending. Like, it's just fascinating to me.
It really is. There's a lot of psychology, energy, all of the things in this too.
Yep.
Oh gosh, you made me think of something else, and now I'm having a 59-year-old moment. Hang on. It was when you were talking about the regulator.
Mm-hmm.
So in your process, do you help people identify in your program where that regulator is for them, or?
Not necessarily. So the way my program is set up, it's a relatively fast, intense program unless they decide, if they go longer term with me, then yes, we can kind of work on those numbers and figure it out. But in the beginning, it's just getting, and you had mentioned, I forgot about that question, like, what's the one thing? Awareness. It's just getting their awareness tuned in to what's really going on when they're thinking about their money, when they're spending their money, when they're saving their money.
Okay. And
just by having that awareness is sometimes enough for them to realize and cut their own spending and suddenly start making that money and increasing that number. Like, I have a client, for example, who was always overdrafting in her account, always, because she was a big spender. And just by getting that awareness in place of seeing where her money is going now, using this process, the future-based budget system that I have, she can see it and plan for it now. And that has shifted how she spends her money. So she's much more careful, and she questions herself better because there's like this awareness button in her head now. She knows what her triggers are, and she's learned to recognize them so that she can take steps that will get her closer to her goals rather than farther away.
I love that. And it's interesting. I can't tell who this is on StreamYard, but I will find out after this. I want to get away from that despair and panic. My whole career, no matter what I make, right? Yep. So probably making more and more as she or he goes through their career. Yep. I feel one step away from van down by the river. And that van down by the river, I think we've all had that image.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just that panic, like the person said, just that panic of
the shoes.
Where's the next? Exactly, and that happens. I warn my clients usually around the halfway point. Something happens. Like, things are going great, they're finally understanding, and it never fails. Something happens to break it. And the problem with most people when they're trying to do this on their own, they assume that it's broken and they quit and they walk away and they don't keep going. That's just a step in the process. That's almost like a test. Yeah, like, okay, do you really want this? And if you could push through and do that a little bit farther, you'll up level to that next step and things will start to go a little bit faster, a little bit better.
I love that. Mm-hmm. It's funny. One of the things, I remember what the thing was I was going to say about the when you get money to not, to hold it, to have it. And somebody told me once, whatever your concept of a lot of cash to have is, like, some people walk around would say, I want to have, $100 in my wallet at all times. Okay, then for you, put $500 in your wallet. Leave there. If somebody says, I want to have a 20 with me all the time, you get $100 in your wallet. If it's a 5, get a 20. But whatever feels ridiculous to have in your wallet, physically put it in your wallet and carry around with you. What's that all about? Is that something you'd heard of? And what's that all about?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because hold on. People write down those imaginary checks that they are going to pay themselves. I have money that I keep at my desk that I just can see. It's hidden, nobody else can see it, but it's hidden just to remind me, like, it's there and it's okay and it's going to take care of me. Same thing with the money in the wallet. It's just a reminder. You don't need to panic. You have that there. Now, the kicker with that is sometimes, again, if you're a hoarder kind of person, you'll do anything to not spend that money, and that's not necessarily healthy either.
Well,
so there's a fine line. Correct.
I've heard that too, where they say, somebody has said, they told me to go out and just spend it. They told me to go out and spend $500, like their tolerance was like $100 or something. They said, go out and spend $500. Like, somebody has 5, somebody goes spend $20 just on stuff for you. It's like, what?
Yep.
What?
Yep. So and that is still an area I struggle with. I was thinking about that before. If I had a bunch of money to spend just for fun, what would I spend it on for myself? I have no idea. So that's that extreme saver kind of person really has a hard time letting go of the money, whereas the spender has a hard time holding on to it, being used to having the money. So there's a lot of personality stuff that goes into it, the money stories from the past when you grew up as a kid. There's so much, which is why you can budget well. You can find anything you want on the internet for free about learning how to budget. but the numbers are very rarely the only problem. There's so much baggage behind it.
And some of the info about budget doesn't do what you're doing. You're taking me on the journey from here's where you are. Yeah. Let's define where you want to go. Let's do a future-based path to get there.
Yeah.
And then saying things to them like, hey, halfway along, something's going to happen.
Yep.
And we're going to have to make a choice. And I'll be here for you kind of thing. So I think that's really, really cool. Does your program like run all the time, or are there certain launch times? Like, can somebody jump in anytime?
Somebody can jump in anytime. I work my business. I homeschool my kids too. So my business is like a part-time business. So I limit how many one-on-one clients I work with at a time. But I usually have at least 1 or 2 spots open for people when they need to come in. And depending on who I'm talking to, I have been known to open up another spot if I'm talking to somebody on the phone and I know I can help them. You know, there's a feel to it when I get to talk to people and chat with people. Some people aren't a great fit yet. There's some steps they should take first. So I let them know. Other people, I'm like, I know you could absolutely do this and get it done fast. So let's get started as soon as possible. So yeah, it's again, everything is very personalized to the person I'm talking to.
That's perfect. So if people want to find out more about this, number 1, they can DM you.
Yes.
I'm guessing. Yep. Number 2, drop any questions in the comments wherever you're seeing this, whether it's my feed, my page, my group, LinkedIn. I will tag Jessica with any questions you guys have. And if the questions are personal, just DM her. Need an introduction, let me know. I'll make it. Or is your group a free group, or is that free? Okay, cool. Yep. So the Money Coaching for Mom Bosses group, I think I'm in it. I have to not go double check.
It's not a very big group. There's only a few hundred people in it, and it's not strictly for moms. Like, you don't have to be a mom to join the group. I get a lot of questions like that. Yeah. I speak mom, so that's just how the group kind of
it's your language because you can't help it. Yes. I speak dog, so I know that.
There you go.
Mine would be Money Coaching for Dog Owners, but anybody could join. Because you're going to understand a lot of the references if you've got dogs, especially the barking in the background. Cool. All right, so let me ask you a question while I've got you here. I'm going to take full advantage of you because that's what I do.
I like it.
What is one thing you can tell people to do this week if they're in this paycheck to paycheck stretch, besides joining the group to learn more tips and tricks? What's one thing I could do this week if I'm living paycheck to paycheck to change it up a little bit?
The one thing that I would recommend, and it's going to sound very counterproductive, is to sit down every day and come up with 3 things that you're grateful for every single day. Gratitude is a huge part of shifting how you're looking at and feeling about your money. So if you can learn to feel what that feels like, that the frequency that we talked about before about raising that up, when you can start to feel that gratitude, that will shift you from any kind of fear that you're feeling, not sure where the bills are going to be paid from. If you can get in the habit of practicing gratitude and recognizing what that feels like so you can turn it on when you need it, you'll start to see things happen and start to see shifts regardless of what your money is doing. You will just start to notice more things, and you'll start kind of acting and thinking and feeling from that little bit of a higher level of yourself, which makes it easier for new opportunities and things to come your way.
I love that because that works on so many things. And like one of the things that, like, just thinking about it, like it's time to pay the bills and you're looking at your bank account and there's not enough money. You got to pick which ones to pay. And maybe one of the bills is for an electric bill. You can look at that and just go, wow, my lights are on.
Yep.
You know, whatever the thing is, you can be grateful for in that moment. Maybe your lights aren't on, but maybe your water is running. You know what I mean? There is something that I remember one time I was so desperate to find something to be grateful for. I looked on my desk and there was a stapler. And I started with, I'm grateful for my stapler. And then I laughed. And once you do that.
Once you laughed and can shift yourself out of it.
You can't be in fear. Just real quick, I'm going to take advantage of you here. Somebody asked a question here. I can heave money on others, but struggle to spend on myself. Purchasing becomes a debate of opportunity cost, which I would say, just reading this question, is probably just it's not really a debate about opportunity cost. You're doing that to get away from whatever the real question is.
Right. That spending money on others, but struggling to spend it on yourself is a lot. That's, I don't want to call anybody out, but that's a lot of a worthiness issue. That's a lot of feeling like, right? Feeling like you're not worth it. It's good to spend it on other people because then you're very generous and all of that. And that's great. generosity is huge and that's a great way to be. But if you can't learn to appreciate and take care of yourself too, you're limiting how much you can then in turn be generous with other people. So,
and I love the way whoever this is raised this question. Purchasing becomes a debate of opportunity cost, because if you get in that mindset, like, wow, if I buy this new pair of glasses, then I can't buy my kid a new water bottle or whatever that might be, especially if that opportunity cost is for spending it on someone else. Then you're slipping back, I think, into the hoarding problem you were talking about.
Scarcity. All scarcity, 100%. It's the scarcity mindset that raises its head no matter what for a lot of people.
Always still.
Oh, yeah. Well, and even when people, because I tell people abundance versus scarcity mindset, you're both all the time. It's just sometimes you're more one side versus the other. And your job is to try and kind of reframe and retrain your brain to swing more to the abundance side than the scarcity side as often as possible. But it's always going to be there, just like doubt. It's always going to pop up. You just kind of recognize it for what it is, be aware that it's there, and kind of pat it on the head and tell it to go take a seat.
I love that, because that feeds right into the thing that I always try and get into every one of these is just don't judge yourself. Give yourself a break. Whether you think negative 100 is your place that you get upset, whether you think 1,000 is a place that you get upset, if you have this wrestling match around opportunity, don't judge yourself. This is just who and where you are. The key is there are ways to help you get past those things if they frustrate you.
Correct.
If they don't frustrate you, you know, but if they do, if you want to change it, there are ways that are out there to deal with it. So
you can,
and that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I see with a lot. Like I said, I speak mostly to women. That's because they think about money differently, and there's so much emotion tied up with it to where 99% of the time the problem has nothing to do with the bills and the paychecks. It has to do with the confidence, the shame, and the judgment and the guilt that they've had over years and years and years of all the money.
I love it. That is so cool. I can't thank you enough for being here. This is a fantastic conversation to kick off a new month. If somebody's got a goal for this month to start getting a handle on bills, on living paycheck to paycheck, pop into the group, see what there is to learn. I think it's awesome that you're doing this for people, and so grateful that you came on here to talk about it. It's a fantastic way to kick off the week.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. I love to, every time I talk to you, I just love it. So
it's mutual, my friend. Everybody, I will see you at Campfires and Facebook Lives the rest of the week. Feel free to reach out to Jessica. Let me just pop her name up here again so you can see it. To reach out to Jessica if you have questions around this as well. And we will, any questions in the comments, we will hit them up with a ton of answers and resources. All right. Everybody have a fantastic week. Good to see you.
Bye.